Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, great. So welcome to the second day of the Symposium of Archival Assembly and to our panel called Archive Work as Artistic Practice. Just a brief intro how we got to this panel. With the project Living Archive, archive work as a contemporary artistic and curatorial practice. From 2011 till 2013, Arsenal paved the way to open an archive, not only for research, but also for production. And Archival Assembly, in its third edition, actually presents installations which resulted from work in audiovisual archives, or which created, hopefully, now we will see in the future what future brings us, but new archives. And some of you may have been at the opening of Archival Assembly in Gerichtsstraße 53, which is the location of the new office premises of Arsenal, and could have seen the exhibited work, two I would now suggest, a sound installation by Susanne Sachsse, entitled Original Sin, The Path of Women Under Socialism.
A woman walks through socialism.
Oh, sorry, there you go. Thank you for the correction.
Doesn't matter.
And the other being a video work by Dana Iskakova and Saudat Ismailova, whose voice is this. Those of you who haven't seen, experienced, heard the work, I encourage you to go to the exhibition and experience yourself. But today, panelists together with me on this podium are Susanne Sachsse. Please greet her. She's sitting here. And Dana Iskakova. Please join me on the stage. And before they share their presentations and their work with you, glimpses of their work, I would just like to briefly introduce them to you. And I will start with Susanne. Susanne works as a solo actress performer, is active in the field of art, theater, performance, radio, dance, and film. Is also a musician, working collaboratively with Laibach, which was very interesting for me, among others, and in collaborative performance and installation projects in the context of CHEAP, which is a Berlin-based art collective, together with Mark Siegel, who I hope is here somewhere in the audience. Yes. And Reginald Davis, yes.
And Daniel Hendrickson.
And Daniel Hendrickson.
And a lot of fluid guests.
Fluid guests? Okay. You will tell us more about them very soon. And prior to becoming a freelance performance artist, she was a member of the Berliner Ensemble, and she appeared in productions by Heiner Müller, Einar Schlief, and Robert Wilson. So very versatile and active artist is here with us, and I'm very glad to welcome you on stage. And our second panelist is Dana Iskakova, is an artist and cultural practitioner who studied finance and liberal arts. And in 2022, Dana was a member of the project initiated by Saudat Ismailova, who was supposed to be here today with us, but sadly couldn't join, and contributed to the publication of the Davra research project, which was presented at Documenta 15 in Kassel, and I hope you will tell us something more about it in a bit. And just a few words about Saudat Ismailova, because I feel like she should be also mentioned in this context, as both of you were invited to be residents at the Living Archive. So Saudat Ismailova is a filmmaker and artist, and her research encompasses Central Asia's ancestral knowledge and traditional spiritual practices, as well as the modern history of Uzbekistan, which is manifested in her interlacing of archival footage from the country's film history. She initiated the Davra Research Group, and her work is in collections of Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam and Centre Pompidou in Paris, and latest work, Melted into the Sun, was commissioned by Fondazione In Between Art Film for the 2024 edition of Venice Biennale. Sadly, she's not here with us, but Dana will also reflect a bit on their joint work. And now I will stop talking and invite Susanne to share her presentation with you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, Stefanie Schulte-Strathaus and Vincent Heidegger, for inviting me. Thank you to this wonderful team, and I'm very, very happy to be with the two of you on stage today and talk about it. And first thing in the world, I watched your work yesterday 3 times in a row. Dana, it's really wonderful. Thank you. What I would like to do is I give you a mood board in the form of a video, which I prepared for you to explain a little bit, or let you know a little bit about the work I have done for AA number 3, which is like a sound and moving image installation with a street lamp and 2 30-centimeter thick sound blocks. This installation is a result, or not a result, but it has a little pre-story. I started to writing a film. I finished the script and I hated myself and was bored with myself and put it away because I busted me that with my filmic imagery, I just illustrate the text. And this is what I hate in general for my practice also as an actor. I always try to avoid illustrating because I think something gets lost when you illustrate. You don't build up attention, so I just throw it away. The film was always planned with the musician and the band Shoo Shoo, wanted to work with Jamie Stewart on music and on a musical number for the film. So I went to Jamie and I said, sorry, we don't do the film, I hate the script. I don't hate the script, but I hate my vision for the images. And what should we do? And then Jamie said, we do a concert. And I say, what does it mean? I say, oh, yeah, write 16 songs. And then I wrote 16 songs, worked together with Phil Collins and the beautiful class of Phil Collins. And 2 of the students are here, Daniela and Karen. And they produced a beautiful audiovisual visual material for the concert with Shushu. So we had the concert of a film script, which was not a film script anymore because it was only 16 songs. Then a guy from Public Radio of Germany was here and saw the concert and said, hey, do you like to do a radio play for public radio? I said, what does it mean? Hey, you write a radio play. So I tried and I thought, oh, why shouldn't I write a radio play in the form of a film script, which I can take the old film script and change a little bit, because I was tempted to have a film only talked by sound. So, and he was really cool enough to do it. And so then we produced this radio play in 2019. And then Stefanie Schulte-Strathaus proposed, she knew the audio play and proposed to do it as an installation. And then I thought, oh, I come back to a moving image now. So I found a solution how I have my sound and added a moving image in a form of a moving street lamp. So, and this is now the mood board, what I want to show, because for this project I deal with the archive of my grandmother, Luise Schingnitz, in my project called Luise Brandt. It's 8mm film material and a lot of archive of East German GDR material of photography and my private book archive. So Julio, please hit the button. It's a true story. Maybe a little louder. It's her story. The story of her conflicted admiration and disdain for Luise Brandt, her grandmother. The East German government built an anti-fascist protective wall around Berlin. Luise Brandt conceived and constructed a majestic private house in a small village in Thüringen, where she lived with her older husband, her younger lover, 2 dogs and 2 daughters. Über Maßstedt. Her walls were twice as thick as the Berlin Wall. That wall is gone. Luise Brandt is dead. GDR socialism failed. The house is reborn bad. It's alive, and it's not pretty. If she had known that the same house became a petty bourgeois prison, she would have exploded the walls, the house, the refrigerator with the crushed ice dispenser. I did really love her. She was some kind of a woman. Or does it matter what you say about people? She was a woman from the GDR. One's own house, self-evident, petit bourgeois wishful dream. In capitalist West Germany after the war, one house after another pops up. Farmland became suburb. A lineup of containers for the nuclear family. Inside, dad, mom, and child. They find their home and nurture their neurosis. Private ownership produces anxiety about ownership. This narrative subsequently established anxiety as a form of an emotional property. Anxiety constitutes property. Own your anxiety. Houses as possessions, Karl Marx's commodity fetishism, the rule of things over man, the life of the product itself. Not many single-family homes are built in East Germany. But it's not like socialistic housing fostered community of children, old people, men, women, workers, or artists. Much like in the West, it was about the nuclear family, the nucleus of the nation. Fucking cells was central heating.
...1961, die Mauer vor der Mauer.
The state and my grandmother, as if they were in battle. The first imposed restrictions with concrete tower blocks and the Berlin Wall. The second lets her fantasy run free. Thick walls protect the movements of her wayward desires. Husband, 15 years older, lover, 15 years younger, 2 dogs, 2 daughters, Luise Brandt, über Maßstedt. Her walls were twice as thick as the Berlin Wall. Original sin. I borrowed it from Jane Bowles. Sin, if one reads it non-religiously, is a serious driving force to stand in opposition to a gender-normative society. She has committed an original sin, writes Jane Bowles about one of her novel's main characters, because their character ignores the existing social structures. She ignores them. And through her actions and her self-expression, she reconfigures them. A revolutionary mood in a socialist camp. A juxtaposition of state borders and domestic walls. Seductive. A subjective feeling was always a political issue in the GDR. Just as in the West. But in the GDR, it develops a different and explosive potential. This is von Thomas Brasch. The non-compliant lifestyle of Luise Brandt, an exceptional woman in the GDR. Thanks to her extravagant lifestyle and radical destruction of the family, she was a social and political sinner in the style of Jane Bowles' characters. Her demands and her demanding presence,
Her resistance to the socio-political reality in East Germany manifested itself both in privatization, a house, and in the extreme publicness of her lifestyle. The whole village knew a husband, 15 years older, a lover, 15 years younger. The whole village knew, and the whole village adored her. Family. State-mandated family. She knew it better. The family has to go. Everything directed against the moral code of the system.
She separates herself from the party discipline, but not from God. From him she is long since divorced. Was the party at church? Yes, but without music.
The labor of the woman in a family is part of the capitalist process of exploitation. That was the only sentence by Karl Marx she ever took into her mouth.
Die Werktätigkeit der Frau in Familie ist ein kapitalistischer Ausbeutungsprozess. Das ist der einzige Satz von Karl Marx, den sie in den Mund nahm. ...6,2 Stunden Arbeit in der Produktion, 1,0 Stunden arbeitsgebundene Zeit, 1,8 Stunden Speisezubereitung, 1,0 Stunden Reinigung der Wäsche, 1,4 Stunden Reinigung der Wohnung, 0,8 Stunden Einkaufen, 0,6 Stunden Sonstiges, 0,15 Stunden Weiterbildung, 7,5 Stunden Schlaf, 1,5 Stunden Körperpflege und Esseneinnahme, 0,45 Stunden Sport, Kultur und Musik.
The most elated stride, the most aesthetic effect. Bad girls' habits take shape quickly. They have to be avoided as soon as they are noticed. They have to be avoided as soon as they are noticed. Woman! A constantly frowning woman, raising her eyebrows, her head, resting her head in her hand. Surprise! Mustn't be surprised. Wrinkles! By early wrinkles. So never lips down. Hard candy. Never buy hard candy. slamming the door with your foot has a repellent effect. Booming laughter and screeching indicates a lack of self-control. So never lick envelopes. They are repulsive. 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 They are
The mass cheers itself on. The mass cheers itself on.
After the wall fell, Louise Brandt, my grandmother, lost something, as individuality became a mass product. The masses in a world of surplus. In the West, she would never have built a private house. That was a political statement. Me too. I hate houses. I love public spaces. How did I get here? New York Times, November 2018.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you. Does it work? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Susanne. I suggest that you, Dana, now show your work, and then we can have a discussion.
Hello. Yeah, it's nice to be here. Thank you to everyone, and I'm happy to be here with Asja and Susanne. And unfortunately, yes, Saudat couldn't be here today. So I will present the work from two of you, and I would like to first start with Saudat's work, talk a little about them. So in 2020, she made 2 films based on archives of Uzbek films, and in the film Her 5 Lives, she explores the changing role of the female archetype in the cinematic history of Uzbekistan. And so there are 5 lives and 5 roles of women that were depicted, and she features films from the early 1920s until the I think the 80s or 90s. And in her right, she explores the Soviet campaign that was called Hujum, which is a campaign that was like emancipating women of the East, or Oriental women as they were called in the Soviet times. And Hujum is a campaign that was addressing religious beliefs and the and rituals and that everything that was connected to their traditional way of living of women in Central Asia and Soviet power, Soviet campaign was addressing that and was like, you should remove all your like clothing, religious clothing, and etc. And you should be like free, but it's a very difficult. It was difficult, and Saudat, in the beginning of the film, she says that this film pays homage to all women who made this big sacrifices for the freedom of the contemporary Uzbek women. And I would be happy if we can see a clip from her film called Her Right, which is also based on the archives of the Uzbek films. So here it is, and if it's possible to turn off the lights. Yeah, thank you. And if you want to see the whole film, it's actually available right now. It's on view in Kindle. Am I saying that right? In Berlin, so it's on view until the end of January. So if you want to see the whole thing, it's there. Anyway, so Sadat was interested in archives for a very long time, and she connects this interest to the fact that once we got our independence as countries in the 90s, in the beginning of the 90s. Soviet Uzbek films were prohibited to be shown at, on TV. People couldn't watch them. People couldn't watch films that were watching before that. So it was a completely different time, and she wanted to have this access to rethink what was happening in the Soviet times. And after this independence, it was important to see the footage of how people lived before the establishment of the Soviet power. So it was important for her to see this footage, this documentary parts of the films. And as you see, most of it's pretty early films of this Uzbek cinema. So, and Sadat was invited to be a resident at the Live-In Archive here in Arsenal, and she kindly invited me to join her in this research. And I had I'm very fortunate, and I was lucky to had the access to the film archives here in Arsenal, and it was great to understand what's here, because Arsenal keeps around 10,000 film copies or something, and I wanted to understand how much of that is from Central Asia and what films are presented here. And I made this diagram. Because it was very interesting to me to understand what is this part of the archive. So there are in total 45 films from Central Asia, and by Central Asia I mean the former republics of the Soviet Union. So these are Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. But right now, and in general, actually, Central Asia is not limited only to these 5 countries. So it's also south part of the Russia, like Bashkortostan, Tatarstan, and we can talk about, of course, Xinjiang region, the East Turkestan in China, and also Afghanistan, and so it's bigger than that, of course. But these 5 republics, which I'm from as well, are connected by this part of history that we were part of the USSR. So, as you see, most of these films are from Kazakhstan. So these are, they're blue. And less from other republics, but still there are a lot from Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, less from Uzbekistan. From Uzbekistan, it's interesting that these 6 films from Uzbekistan are cartoons, are animated films. And so that was the picture. And the first film, like the earliest film in the archive, is The First Teacher by Andrei Konchalovsky. It's from 1965. And the very last film, the latest film from Central Asia, is The Communist Revolution Was Caused by the Sun by Anton Vidokle. And I don't know if I said that right, but it's from 2015. And it's interesting that both of those films were shot not by local filmmakers, but from by Russian, well, not Russian, but filmmakers from Russian descent, and they're not locals, and yeah, but I decided to focus the film on at the end of the 90s, so there are only 2 films that were shot after 2000s, only 2 of them, and one of them is The Communist Revolution Was Caused by the Sun. So the last film I took was from 1998. It's the film by Artak Merkulov, and it's a beautiful film about Almaty city, which I'm from. And actually, the first teacher is not quite the earliest film here, because I found out that in the textless archive there is a textless in German of the film Turksip by Viktor Turin from 1929, and it's interesting that it's a film footage, like the documentary about the Turksip Railroad and how it was built in Central Asia, and I love the fact that you also here have a film with the same title, Turksip, but from 1986, and it's also about the railroad, but it's absolutely different, and in the late 80s, people were much freer to talk about many things, and I will later show a clip from the film, and I included some parts from Turksip to that because it was so empowering, so strong to hear these words, even though it was shot as if it's pretty average Soviet film, which like Soviet music. It was shot pretty, well, Soviet, I don't know, Soviet-like, and but what they're saying is so powerful, and they were openly talking about the establishment of the Soviet power here in Central Asia, and they were talking about genocide. They were talking about people dying, and the steppe being, well, yeah, you will see that later, and if you've probably already seen the film, you probably understand what I'm talking about. So it was interesting that this Turksip is very Soviet, like the Soviet film, like, okay, we're finally building the railroad in the steppe, so people won't be using only horses or camels. Yeah, so it was, and this is rethinking that film. So, and both the films are in the archive. So the beautiful thing is that part of these 45 films, there are 17 short animated films from the so-called Zastoy period of Soviet history, and these animated films are amazing. They're so different, and from like all 5 republics, but actually in the archives there are much more from the whole Soviet Union, and I think you maybe should make a program of them and show them somehow, because they're great and so different. Each of them like is done differently, and yeah, they're beautiful. So yeah, and so I made this film based on these archives of the Arsenal, and I was free, and so that told me that, well, what do you want to do, and what do you want to make? What did you notice in these films? And she, yeah, I was very free to choose whatever I wanted as my focus of research, but watching these films, I couldn't help but notice what were people talking about and how through time we can trace the change in their voice and whatever they were talking about. And I understand that in a way in films, vocalizing things is usually a lazy way to do things, because you can use some cinematic tricks, or I don't know, somehow do it not saying this out loud, but actually I think it was important to hear a lot of things, because even now it's still complex, the whole situation, and this attitude, like the whole attitude to our Soviet past. And yeah, I wanted to trace what people were talking about and how it changed over time. And yeah, so at first it was a collage of audio tracks, and I wanted to connect it. I didn't want to relate these voices to any people, so you wouldn't see any person but one in the film. And because these films are mostly in Russian, well, almost all of them, and these voices were dubbed in Moscow, again, almost all of them, and it's not. And there is one film called Balkon, for example. It's a film from 1988, and there is the main character. He's the actor said later that no one could understand, was it me or was it not me, because the voice was different. It was not my voice, even though the film was shot in Russian and he was talking in Russian, but a completely different person dubbed it, and he couldn't understand if it was him or not. And that these kind of things of nuances of the voices and whatever they were talking about, and understanding who and why, and yeah, whose voice was that? And so yeah, and I would be happy to show you a clip from that. It's the last part of the film, and thank you.
Он был. Жанна? Я отца-то не помню. Какой он был?
Высокий. Он очень много знал.
Почему нам запрещали говорить об отце?
Так было надо.
Заман не болып барады сапа. Ақ қарасын айыра алмай қалдық қой. Заман деймісің? Әй, бауырым Мұқатай, ай. Бәрі астан кестен болып кетті ғой. Кімнің дос, кімнің жау екенін білмей қалды ғой бұл қазақ. Сонда бұған кім кінәлі аға? Ей, кім дейсің? Бәрі өзімізден. Данышпан абай бекер күйінді ме? Бас-басына бей болған өңкей қиқым, мінекей кетірді ғой елдің сыйқын.
Александр Борисович, пора на пьедестал.
Гость гостем, а честь честью. Только непонятно, кто гости, а кто хозяева. Может, вы хозяева? Строите дорогу, по степи покатит шайтан-арба. Только я боюсь, не сметет ли она все живое в степи, а?
Да неужели ты не видишь, что строит эту дорогу? Закрепляют в степях великорусскую, большевистскую колонизацию. Мы, мусульмане-коммунисты, выбрали единственно верную дорогу для своего народа, для строительства национальной демократии.
Философская основа нашего поколения была очень прочная. Нас убивали, губили, сажали в тюрьмы. А все равно мы делали дело же. И много дел сделали. Мы страшно верили в социализм, верили в революцию, верили в Ленина. Верили газете, правде, что после этих постоянных трудностей, после этого начнется, конечно, рай на земле. И мы верили в это. Вот мы ради этого рая, значит, и...
Не морочил бы ты ей без того больную голову. От того, что мы мелем, воды в море не прибавится. Наливай-ка лучше.
Кеткен дұрыс. Кету керек. Осында сен ішіп кетесің әйтпесе, менде семья бар деген секілді. Сонымен айтып жүрміз ғой, бір күні отын керек, бір күні шөп керек деген секілді. Сен енді жүресің ғой?
Иә, қайтпаймын.
Дұрыс, мұнда шіріп өлесің босқа. Мен де кетейін деп едім, бірақ бала-шағамен қайда барасың?
И вот будущее общество мне представляется так, что мы будем путаться, потом постепенно мы все равно вернемся к упорядоченной вот этой системе, где у нас будут верные люди сидеть, хорошие люди, будут прекрасные законы.
Сегодня по радио передавали. Горбачева сняли.
Не знаю. Не верю. Да вообще-то они все обещаниями пока народ кормит.
Среди них мне нравится ваш, как его?
Назарбаев. Нурсултан его зовут. Хорош мужик.
Ты слышал? Журналиста убили. Как может дойти до такого, чтобы сами себе от друг друга? Свои же.
Все это издалека исходит, не отсюда. Народом манипулируют.
Да кто манипулирует? Что, у самих мозгов нет, что ли? Мы сами во всем виноваты. Ты, я. Это надо понять.
Какие у вас есть желания? Ну, кроме того, чтобы выплачивалась зарплата, была одежда, пропитание. В этом действительно сейчас нуждается большинство. А вот кроме этого...
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. I would like to start by asking 1-2 questions before opening the floor for audience. Somehow what brought us together here, this panel, I had the impression is the socialist past of our respective countries, and particularly in your cases of how it feeds into your artistic work and the exploration of sound. As I see in your work, Susanne, the socialist past feeds into more kind of a postmodern pastiche and collage that is part of your sound and light installation, but also in the presentation that you just showed us, with a lot of intertextuality, referencing, and the kind of the position, questioning the position of a woman under kind of constraints of a familial setting, but within and under socialist past. So you kind of align yourself through your work and the exploration of sound sound possibilities with more familial private context, as juxtaposed perhaps to Dana's work, where the exploration of socialist past through the technological development of sound recording, sound voice throughout the history of cinema, you kind of align yourself with collective more and with the people, with male voices, which are proponents more of a collective, I would say. So even though there is a common thread with the socialist past, there is obvious inclination, so in aesthetic choices, but also in terms of your preoccupation with the familial and in yours with collective. So could you perhaps a bit reflect on it, or yeah?
Yeah, thank you for the question. First of all, I don't see my work as a sound work. I think it's provoking, hopefully, a moving image. And for me, like going back to the socialist path and to figures of women in East Germany, it was like I was, after the war fall, long time ago, I was so pissed when I got like these questions of mostly from the West, like with their idea of the emancipation of the women in East Germany. And I was really angry because they never asked. They always said, oh, you had this, you could like go to work, you have kindergarten. Yes, we had, we did. We could work, we had kindergartens, but actually it meant that we have to do all the double work. So like we go to work, we have the kids. When I was a little kid, nobody, no father was like at a parents' evening for the teachers or so. So like this myths, like the free women in East Germany, it was really horrible because we were somehow patronized also by the government. The party discipline was the husband as well. So, and that's why I thought, oh, there are stories from East Germany where women took another position. And it was, in this case, I came back to the life of my grandmother. This is like what I say in this little mood board, it's true. She really decided, her favorite sentence of her was what she taught me when I was a little girl. Susie, the Berlin Wall is 30 centimeter thick, but my house are 60 centimeter thick and I hate the family. And then she also said, like, what can a mass be still revolutionary? What is individuality? Is the individuality in East Germany a failed socialist system? I still believe in socialism. What is it? And then I was also like, when I talk about or think about individuality and the masses, after I experienced the West, I say, what the fuck, individuality? This is only masses. They have fashion, they behave for, like, I felt almost like I'm under more of a strict regime of mass culture or something. I felt at the beginning much more individual in East Germany, I have to say. Even it was a fight against like mass demonstrations, we had to march, for example. So we had like the attitudes of the masses. First of May, we had to march. We had like in kindergarten, we had to march. We had to stand in front of a flag. So everything seemed to be part of the masses, but it felt more individual. Also my grandmother, when I was like complaining about like, okay, I was complaining a lot that, oh, as young pioneers, we just have to stand there in front of the flag every morning. And she said, oh, don't be stupid, just like do something with it. I said, what would she do? And then I said, oh, I just faint. So I just like perform as I saw, and I just like stand in front of the flag and I said, and like from this day, I never had to stand in front of this fucking flag. So that's what I mean, like with the masses and individuality, that sometimes like the masses provoke individuality, and I still believe in collectives or in the masses, but it's a serious question how revolutionary could be a mass. And on the other hand, like what you see in this little mood board is like the excerpts like with this diagram of the woman in socialism. That's from a book what every girl got with 14 years for the Jugendweihe, like the ceremony that now you're a woman, and it's called Die kleine Enzyklopädie for a woman. And there, like I can't believe, because I mean, like we heard about amazing revolutionary women in socialism, and they told us we have like 6 hours of work, 1 hour go to work, cleaning, doing this, doing that, and 0.15 minutes for other things, for yourself. So this, and then that was like that. They also like this one song what Jamie like put into music. This original from the book, "The Most Elated Stride," like how a woman should behave, like biting your fingernails has a repellent effect. This was in an East German socialist book for young women. Horrible. So and this was like what my grandmother was always fighting against.
Can you also elaborate more on?
Yeah. Is it working? Oh, yeah. I also had these encyclopedias. Well, they were different.
What did they say?
Well, they were like about sewing, about cooking, about this kind of things. Yeah, but they were like for girls. And I was born after the socialist past, but still they were part of the childhood. Yeah. So the majority of those, no, not majority, all of those films are shot by men. And we mostly hear male voices, yes, but these people are different, and they were scattered all over Central Asia, and we hear voices in Kazakh. Those were subtitles were in yellow, and we hear Russian men as well. We hear different kind of people, but I wanted to create a collage of these voices, different voices, and they were talking about different things, but they were all living that life. Well, shared the same. The same reality, I guess.
And also, I mean, we could trace down a bit the transformation within the society as we follow what they're talking about. I have the feeling there's a sense of disillusionment, also of people without leader. Who is the leader? Which leader? So, there are different leaders like Stalin, Lenin mentioned, and Gorbachev. And also, I had the impression that an ordinary person is lost in or without orientation, and this is something I, coming from former Yugoslavia, can totally relate to as a kind of a shared experience of having a leader and this authority figure that you one follows and shouldn't follow, of course, but somehow as we were raised in such a setting. So it resonated very strongly with me. And even though you suggest that they're all male voices that we heard, and I found that your strategy of making this crack so open on the disillusionment about the socialist ideals and something which will be also colonial past, is a very feminine method in itself. I felt like how you juxtapose the visual images and audio images, because they in a way also create images we could relate to and investigate further the space. So I felt it has something very feminine and sensuous, and even though these are all male voices that we keep hearing. So this was just a brief comment.
Yes.
I think it was so interesting that when you said whose voice is it, like with this general question, and you don't show like the characters who speak, you give them the voice back somehow. I know it's the dubbed version as you explained, but I think it was so, for me, so fantastic how you told, which I try to explain at the beginning where I thought writing a script and I fail with my images I planned to do, and then I said, oh man, I wish I would be Dana, because I think you managed so well this synchronicity and asynchronicity of sound and image. For me that was really, 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 really special, and also it's not a historical film for me, because for me it's stuck totally who's the host and who's the guest. And this is really like in our political times so important, like to ask this question. So thank you again so much. Go and watch the whole film if you haven't.
Yeah, thank you. It's it's difficult to talk about chronology in this film because it's So I'm actually going to get alongside chronology. So I'm starting from the 1965 and finishing at the end of the century, but the narratives are in different times. So like some films are from 80s, but are about war, about the establishment of the Soviets, and that's why it's like so. But I still wanted to make it chronological because I wanted to trace that people, okay, yeah, we are talking about war, or we're talking about Stalin terror, and about, I don't know, many things that were happening in the past, but we're talking in a new language. We're talking differently because we now can talk differently, and we now can be frank, and we can say those things that we never could before. And I like that in the second part we hear more, well, not more though, but still Kazakh voices and Central Asian languages. But of course we get to understand that still the majority speaks Russian, and that Russian is like connecting the region, and we've lost a lot, and the language as well, and people were lost, but people were still hopeful. Not all, but some, and but this. The language they were speaking changed, exactly, and I wanted to somehow capture that.
Yeah, I think it came across really nicely in your work, and especially what kind of resonated very well with me is the movement in itself, which is integral to it. And first, the part with the landscape, which is like kind of a nice natural landscape with just animals, and followed by the railroad, and kind of as a sign of a progress, but in the tracking shots, which always kind of imply also not just movement in space, but also in time. So I'm really grateful for this. Yeah, and I suggest that we open the floor now to audience for questions. Yes.
Thank you so much for this fascinating panel. It's going to be hard to bridge the two projects, so I'm going to continue the conversation that you ended up with, Dana and Asja. But taking up Susanne's notion of the crucial question being who is the host and who is the guest. For me, when I watched your collage, it was also about the question where and how can we, in this realm of manipulation and faking hospitality or hostility, can we find authenticity? And if there is such a possibility, how much does this focus, your focus of decooperated voices, add to the possibility of the approach? Because when you now said about that you still thought it was important that there is a chronology, I was wondering whether you, when you were watching these films or trying to focus on it, did you notice some kind of, I don't know, development or attitude towards the question, what is kind of a real sound, a real voice, or an authentic, credible voice, and what isn't? Or doesn't this question make any sense in that relation?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question and for noticing this. I think, yeah, when you started watching the early films, and they were like the first teacher, Bekinahodsa, Trizna, and Neveska, and so on, they were written by Soviet authors, and they were about Soviet people and their difficulties, their troubles, and how they were very obedient, or I don't know how to say, that they were okay with everything that was happening. They were accepting everything, and they even back in the beginning, they're hopeless in a way, but they accept everything that's happening to them because, yeah. And I noticed that the beautiful thing about these films that they were deprived of many things, of their land, of their horses, I don't know, everything. It was took away from them, and they couldn't do anything with that. And the only way they could express themselves is through singing. And it was beautiful that in many things I noticed that they were singing about things, and they were they couldn't say anything, so there was no. They couldn't say, no, I don't want to do this, or stop taking away, I don't know, my horse or my land or my tree. They were just silent about this. But I couldn't just insert silence, but it was beautiful that they were singing about this. In many films, including Trizna, and before that clip, there was a song about his horse. And so they couldn't say anything to these power figures, but they could sing. And they were just singing, and their authenticity, their true voice was only in a song, because that was a place of freedom. And that was a place where they could express everything they were crying about, they were depriving of, and yeah, and those so songs and music was crucial for people, but again, we can trace that music is also very changing, pretty drastically, because the Soviet sounds, Soviet sound in general is impacting it very hard. I don't know, and by the end of the film and through all this, but wait. So in the first part, they cry, they are singing, and they are expressing themselves in songs. And after that part of Zastoy and the animated film part, they are finally free because Gorbachev came, and it was they could talk about everything basically. And it was crazy that they were, talking about colonization. Nowadays, people are hesitant to talk about colonization. Well, not say the word colonizers or that we were colonized, because it's a powerful word, and in schools we're not taught that it was a colonization. We cannot say that word because it was not, as they say. But back then it was so powerful. Even in the 80s, it was a Soviet film, but they were talking about it pretty openly, and everything that was afterwards, and they were looking for themselves, of course. And but this openness is crucial, I think, after the mid 80s, and that they were free to talk. But still, it was pretty hopeless times. I don't know, this is hopeless, but yeah. So light.
And are there any other questions? Yeah, here, please, in the third row.
I think I will continue from this notion of hopelessness, because somehow also in the dialogues, it is very present that a despair, almost like a disappointment regarding an utopia, or it feels almost like a procession of the coming failure of the utopia, even from 60s onwards. It's very interesting that that's audible in those films and the way you edit it amazingly. So yeah, I wonder your reflection regarding that, like how actually can we really trace this almost disappointment till 89 in those films, how this notion of disappointment already leaking through the dialogues and through the Sovexpo film commissions who are basically inspecting those scripts and making the production possible. So I wonder about how this disappointment, this hopelessness is audible.
I think it's thanks to the film directors, because they wanted to say that out loud, to put it in the film, because they were lost, they were disappointed, those filmmakers who made those films, and so I just I was just listening and understanding that these were the questions that were in the air, and these were like something that was important to people, and yeah, a lot of like some of these films are like so hopeless, and yeah, for example, the Khian or the End Station by Serika Primov. It's such a like yeah, it's the whole film is despair basically. He goes back to his own village that he's from, and it's so like there's nothing, and it's so bad that young people don't have anything to do, and they drink themselves, yeah, and they're, well, you know, it wasn't and he left here, and because, and that's what filmmakers were talking about, were thinking about, were adding in their films, yeah. So it's there. It's thanks to them.
Thank you. There was another question here.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for this very dynamic panel and beautiful presentations. I have a short remark, or it's actually more of a recommendation, and then also a question for both of you. The remark is about Saudat Ismailova piece. You showed an excerpt from Dana, which is her 5 lives, I think, yeah. So many of the excerpts there actually come from a film from 1971 by Ali Khamraev. It's called Bez stracha, Without Fear, and I really recommend everyone here watching it. It's heavily inspired by the silent films from the 20s that were made in Uzbekistan, which are also worth their own retrospective. But this film, it was quite revolutionary in terms of, it's actually a piece of feminist filmmaking, or as we would say, probably a reluctant piece of feminist filmmaking. But it's, I really recommend watching this film. And my question is about language, and more specifically about socialist language. Like many of the films that you use, and also much of the language that you use, Susanne, it's obvious from the socialist era, which had its own use of language, that you and I and many here probably still know, but we have like a new generation that went to school after the fall of the wall that is not being taught these idioms. So I was wondering, because already during Perestroika and then in the 90s after the Wende, we had a lot of films dealing with these issues, also from a feminist perspective. And it's now 24, and I feel like, oh, we're at that same space again. But how did you think about this at all? Like, how are we communicating with a current generation, or maybe also with your own children that did not grow up in the GDR, and yeah, the question is for both of you. So did you choose to translate certain words, or did you choose to leave them on purpose? Yeah.
In case of East and West Germany, we almost had the same words, but there were different ideologies. And exactly, antifaschistischer Schutzwall, so we had like other war creations, exactly, or for example, we were not allowed to say Weihnachtsengel, it's like a Christmas angel, we said Jahreswechselbaum Flügelfigur. Now I try to translate it in English, it's like the tree which you have when the year is over to trim, it's like a flying figure. So that was like so we had different words, but first comes in my mind was like when I read translations, for example, from Dostoevsky, that in the East German edition there were like the whole beautiful essay on murdering and how important murderer is, that was cut out in East Germany. So I thought it's a totally different book. So this, the word creation, I would say it became like, it was like filtered through ideology. So, and like religious terms were like, sort of like completely no-go. And yeah. But it's interesting that you ask these questions. I think I'm very interested in language and also in our times when like the rise of national states is like going on. And I think the language changed a lot, and it has parallels, but like much more horrifying than in the last century. So I think it's a very important language. So it's like I'm dealing a lot with transformation of languages. Thank you.
But also what's very interesting, that the language has such a focal point, but at the beginning you mentioned that in your work you go very much against the illustration. So could you just briefly elaborate on that?
This comes like from my practice, which I learned, and it's like a small part of my working life right now, but it is still a part as an actress. And I was trained in East Germany, where we were into like the method acting. So I think there are amazing actors who do the method, but it's not for me. And so, and there was like always how we learned acting was more like that you put yourself in a composition to a text and to a space. And it was never to illustrate. It was never like, for example, when I have a scene, I cry, I have a nervous breakdown, so I would never try to cry. I think you would laugh when I would do it. So I have a completely different structure. Mostly I count, also like in a manic maybe, but I find strategies which are in a dialectic Widerspruch, what is opposite to the text. And what was encouraging me was like a photo book by Ouija, like this American photographer who had like this police station in his car and traveled like to all like the places where there were crimes. And then I studied the photos and I was blown away when I saw the image, and then I read the title of the photo. For example, there was like a teenage girl, she was probably 13, and she looked totally euphoric, and the title and the situation was her first murder. So, and then I thought, this is so right. Why do you think I have to cry to make you cry? I want to make you cry, but I think not with my real tears.
Thank you. Perhaps we have time for one last question. Yeah, one last question over there. The lady in the third row.
I leave it up to you who answers this question, but I'm curious to hear the ways that working within the archive, how did that affect the eventual work? So more specifically, for example, archival databases, or maybe in Susanne's case, more the personal archive. I'm not sure who of you feels like answering this.
Thank you. Well, it's all based on archives, so I wouldn't be able to do it without it. Yeah.
And for example, for you, you were looking into the ways of, well, situating Central Asian film within Arsenal's database or Arsenal's archive. Were there any things that you encountered that sort of that steered the way that you worked on your film, for example? Or were there ways that you could see how these films ended up here, for example? Or was it difficult for you to access the archive, or was that something was it an easy process?
Okay. So yeah, it was easy thanks to the team of Arsenal Film Archive, and they showed me the films, like these actually the copies of films, and I watched some films in the Arsenal cinema, and I also had access to the text list and forum documentation, and it was great to be able to access everything, and it was very open and super warm. Like I don't know, people are very nice here. Yeah, so yeah, everything was very good, and yeah, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I think working with an archive is fantastic because it's nothing else than stealing, which is usually an artist's practice, and it's very productive. So, for example, the last film, the Cheap Collective and I did, it was also starting with a complete composed 90-minute sound. It was dialogue, music, monologue, collages. And it was a dream. Like I said, I really want to do one time a film where I start completely with a totally composed soundtrack to give like the so-called first choice on sound, text and voice and music, and put the film together, conducted by the soundtrack. And it was like, most of it was archival footage. So I like to work with archives because everything is there. You just like have to contextualize it differently in order to make it your own, I think.
I would like to add something to Dana, what Dana just said, because if you go to the exhibition, you see all the text lists that she also had access to, and there's also a computer where you can see our very first database, and our new current database is based on that one. So you can see there is not so much information that can help you. Now we have added a little bit, but we are in the process of it. But it's really worth checking it out. You can use it without using a mouse because it's from that time, from the 80s. But Dana was very helpful because one of the big problems is in the database, the country of origin, especially in those cases. And Dana was very helpful with this. So I think we still have a lot of work to do to correct the data in the database according to certain historical times, and especially when it comes to the country and language, of course. Yeah.
Okay, on that note, we will finish now our panel discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susanne, Dana, to the audience. And enjoy the rest of the Archival Assembly, and see you around for more questions. Yeah.